Segment 1, July 2nd, the other Independence Day. July 2nd, the day America actually voted for independence. That's right, folks. July 4th gets all the fireworks, the parades, and the discounted lawn chairs at Walmart. But it was July 2nd when Congress passed the Lee Resolution, officially telling King George to take his crumpets and bugger off. John Adams even predicted that July 2nd would be celebrated as the Great Anniversary Festival. Sorry, John. Turns out we like our revolutionary holidays to come with a side of barbecue and the word declaration. This was the moment the colonies officially ghosted Britain. 12 colonies said yes to freedom, while New York was that friend who never RSVPs and then shows up with a +1. The Continental Congress didn't just break up with Britain, they changed their Facebook status to "It's complicated with monarchy." But wait, why do we celebrate on July 4th then? Because that's when they approved the text of the Declaration of Independence. Basically, July 2nd is when we broke up. July 4th is when we posted the breakup announcement on social media, complete with a dramatic quote and a bald eagle gif. Segment 2, 1494's World Slice and Dice, the Treaty of Tordesillas. In 1494, Spain and Portugal signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, the original "you take that side, I take this side" agreement, but with continents. They split up the newly discovered world like divorced parents divvying up vacation custody. Only this time, the kids didn't know they were part of the deal. This was peak colonial audacity. Two European countries with full backing from the Pope decided they could draw a line down the planet and call dibs on whatever they bumped into. Portugal snagged Brazil. Spain got, well, pretty much the rest of the Americas. Indigenous peoples, not consulted. Their land was apparently up for grabs, like hotel shampoo bottles. The line kept shifting like every bad contract negotiation ever. Eventually, even other European powers like France and England said, "Wait a minute, who died and made you globe king?" To which Spain replied, "Pope." And France replied, "We're Catholic, not blind." Segment 3, 1839's Revolt on the Sea, the Amistad Mutiny. On July 2nd, 1839, 53 kidnapped Africans aboard the slave ship Amistad said, "Not today, colonizers," and launched a mutiny. Led by Joseph Sincay, they killed the captain and the cook, but spared the navigator, proving they were more humane than their captors. They ordered him to sail them back to Africa. Spoiler, he didn't. Instead, the ship zigzagged its way to Long Island, where the U.S. Navy arrested the survivors. President Martin Van Buren, eyeing his re-election campaign, saw this as a chance to kiss up to the pro-slavery South and prepped a ship to send the mutineers back to Cuba. Because nothing says campaign strategy like deporting freedom fighters. But abolitionists, led by Lewis Tappan and a retired ringer named John Quincy Adams, said, "Hold my powdered wig." They took the case to court, argued these were free people, not cargo, and won. The Supreme Court said, yup, kidnapped, and the Africans were freed. Van Buren lost his re-election, Adams got a standing ovation, and Sankey, he got to go home. It's one of the rare times in U.S. legal history where justice didn't just show up late, it actually showed up at all. Segment 4, 1881's Garfield gets shot. The spoil system goes boom. President James Garfield was shot on July 2nd, 1881 by Charles Guiteau, a man so delusional he thought killing the president would get him a diplomatic post. This was before LinkedIn, clearly. Garfield survived the initial shooting but died 79 days later from medical malpractice that would make even medieval barbers cringe. The doctors couldn't find the bullet, even with Alexander Graham Bell inventing a metal detector just for the occasion. But hey, they did find a way to infect every organ along the way. This assassination put a spotlight on the corrupt spoil system, where government jobs were handed out like party favors. Public outrage finally led to the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. So yes, Garfield died, but at least now your DMV clerk has to pass a test. Segment 5, 1890's trust issues, the Sherman Antitrust Act. On July 2nd, 1890, Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, America's first attempt at telling big corporations, no, you can't sit at every lunch table. Trusts were like 19th century Thanos, snapping away competition with one fat, greedy finger. Standard Oil, sugar trusts, even railroads. The Sherman Act was supposed to break them up, but early courts read it like the fine print on a cereal box, confusing and ultimately dismissible. Then Teddy Roosevelt came along with a big stick and a bigger ego and said, you know what, let's make this law do something. He sued the Northern Securities Company, made headlines, and earned the nickname Trust Buster. Eat your heart out, Captain Planet. The act got its groove back and even made a cameo against Microsoft in the 90s. Trust us, monopolies still hate July 2nd. Segment 6. 1900 Zeppelin takes flight. Let's float on over to July 2nd, 1900. Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin launched his first rigid airship, the LZ-1, over Lake Constance. The result? 19th century people looked up, saw a flying aluminum whale, and collectively lost their minds. This thing was 420 feet long, powered by gasoline engines, and held together by sheer German willpower and what I assume was a lot of duct tape. The first flight lasted 18 minutes, which is longer than most of my attention span during Zoom meetings. Sure, it crashed later and Zeppelin's company went bankrupt, but the LZ-4 eventually turned things around. Germany fell in love with these things so hard they built more than 100 of them. Then came the Hindenburg, which, let's just say, took the phrase crash and burn to a new level. Still, Zeppelin laid the groundwork for future aviation, and for every rock band that ever dreamed of moody guitar solos and shirtless concerts. Segment 7, 1917's horror in East St. Louis. July 2nd, 1917. East St. Louis becomes the stage for one of the most horrifying race riots in American history. Thousands of white rioters launched a brutal attack on the city's black community after rumors and racial tensions already boiling from labor disputes exploded. This wasn't just a riot, it was a massacre. Entire black neighborhoods were set on fire. Residents were shot trying to escape the flames. Water hoses were cut, and the Illinois National Guard allegedly joined the mobs. Because when the people who are supposed to protect you start swinging the bat, you know something's broken. The official death toll says 39 African Americans died. Activists argue the real number could be 2 to 3 times higher. The number of displaced? Around 6,000. A reporter described the scene as the massacre of helpless Negroes. The NAACP responded with the silent parade in New York. 10,000 black Americans marched in protest dressed in white without a single word. And yet the East St. Louis Chamber of Commerce was more concerned about the damaged property than the dead people. Talk about priorities. This riot wasn't just about race. It was about labor, power, and a society that refused to acknowledge the humanity of its black citizens. A century later, we still ask ourselves, how far have we come? And how often are we still here? Segment 8. 1937's Vanishing Point. Amelia Earhart disappears. On July 2nd, 1937, Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, vanished while trying to fly around the world. One minute, they were aiming for Howland Island. The next minute, they were the biggest cold case in aviation history. Their last transmission, a haunting, "We are running north and south," which is basically pilot code for, "We have no clue where the hell we are." The search was massive. Theories were wilder than a Reddit thread. Crashed and sank, captured by the Japanese, survived, and lived under an alias in New Jersey. At this point, Amelia Earhart might have a better shot at solving her own disappearance than we do. But here's what we do know. Earhart was a trailblazer. She inspired generations of women to pursue the skies and beyond. Her disappearance was tragic, but her legacy? Clear skies and rising altitudes. Segment 9, 1964's Civil Rights Victory. On July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson did something bold, controversial, and absolutely necessary. He signed the Civil Rights Act into law. It banned segregation in public places, outlawed employment discrimination, and basically told Jim Crow to pack his bags. MLK was there, the Southern Bloc was furious, and LBJ reportedly muttered, "We just delivered the South to the Republican Party for a long time to come." He was right. It wasn't easy. The bill faced the longest Senate filibuster in history at the time, but America finally found the moral courage to act. And despite decades of resistance, the Civil Rights Act remains one of the most powerful laws for equal protection. The irony, many of the same arguments used against this act, states' rights, economic freedom, religious liberty, are still dusted off today whenever someone wants to argue against treating people equally. Funny how history repeats, but with worse haircuts. Segment 10, 1976's reunification of Vietnam. On July 2nd, 1976, Vietnam officially became one country again. North and South Vietnam merged into the Socialist Republic of Vietnam after decades of colonization, war, and an American-backed division that didn't work out. kind of like a geopolitical Tinder date gone wrong. It wasn't just political. It was economic, social, and emotional. The peasantry was devastated. Infrastructure bombed to rubble. Oh, and thanks to years of American napalm, defoliants, and Agent Orange, birth defects became part of daily life. Happy reunification. But the Vietnamese people rebuilt. They launched Doi Moi reforms in the 1980s, opened up their economy, and started turning the page. They now sell you the shoes you wear while scrolling TikTok about how communism failed. Ironic? Yes. Effective? Also yes. Today, Vietnam remains a one-party state, but it's also a growing economic power. So July 2nd marks not just the end of war, but the start of a long, complicated peace. Segment 11. 1990's Mecca Tuttle tragedy. July 2nd, 1990, over 1,400 Muslim pilgrims died in a stampede inside a tunnel near Mecca during the Hajj pilgrimage. A crushing combination of overcapacity, poor crowd management, and bad communication led to one of the deadliest disasters in religious history. The tragedy prompted changes in how the Saudi government handles crowd control, changes that, frankly, didn't always work, because more deadly stampedes followed. Turns out managing millions of people in 100-degree heat with no shade or ventilation is a logistical nightmare. But for many, Hajj is a sacred obligation, so they keep coming. And Saudi Arabia keeps building new infrastructure. More cameras, more crowd barriers. But the lesson of July 2nd, 1990, pilgrimage requires more than faith. It demands accountability. Conclusion, July 2nd. The underrated blockbuster. So there you have it, July 2nd, the date that keeps on giving. Independence votes, civil rights, assassination attempts, treaties that carved up the world, riots, mutinies, airships, disappearing legends, and a nation stitched back together after decades of war. If history had a trailer, July 2nd would be the summer blockbuster with explosions, courtroom dramas, inspirational speeches, and at least one catastrophic fire. And the tagline, one day, infinite consequences. So this July 2nd, don't just pregame the 4th. Light a sparkler for the date that lit 1,000 fuses. Because if you want to understand where we're going, you better remember where we blew everything up first.